Yep. So what do we want to call it? What day is it? 14? Anyone know?
Yeah, 14.
We'll call it day 14. We're going to choose React.
Every time you want to do something new, you have to do that npm create v.
If you want to create a new web application using React.
Okay.
Correct. You certainly don't have to do this while you're just working on the same application. We're going to choose the last one, but between these two, it probably doesn't matter at all. We're going to follow the instructions. Actually, we're not going to follow the instructions because what I recommend is that you open the folder directly in VS Code so that your terminal will match the folder. So I'm going to find day 14 that I just created. There we go. I'm going to select it. Now when I open my terminal, it takes me right to where I need to be. Now I need to install the node modules, basically JavaScript code that other people wrote that I'm relying on. Does anyone remember how to do that? How we can install the node modules?
Was you do it at MPI?
npmi, yeah, short for install. We only have to do this one time though, initially when we're setting up the project.
Max, can we also or do like cd into the folder and then just do like code space I?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or space dot. My bad.
What?
It's like the shorthand.
Are you talking about the double ampersand to do two commands?
Basically, when you install or when you create a React project with Vite,
yeah,
and then it tells you to cd into the folder,
yeah,
basically from that tool, and then as long as you have, there's like some setting on VS Code, but you can open VS Code with the code.
So code dot dash r.
Yeah,
it is great. It's what I use. I just thought it would. I just thought file open folder was simpler for you guys. This will do the same thing as file open folder, but it'll open whatever your current path is in the terminal. So yeah, you can absolutely use that. Okay, so finally, npm run dev to start our development environment for React. We click on this link, and that is it. We have a brand new React project ready to go, except we want to clear their code, right? So our entry point is going to be app.jsx, and we can just clear this out and press save. And then I'm also just going to clear out all their styling from index.css and app.css. Okay, so now I'm going to clear this old stuff out too. Yeah. So now we have a brand spanking new React application ready to go. So I want to talk about our objectives for today. Event listeners, right? What are event listeners outside of, it's a term that's more general than just React, right? We learned about event listeners. Let's refresh our minds. What is an event listener, Ryan? What's the concept of it?
It's something that helps you react to some input on the page.
Yeah, it fuels user interactions, right? So if a user clicks, they type into a form. Those are going to be the most common ways they interact. Our application needs to change. In React, we're probably going to change state, and then the view is going to change. So that's what we're working on today, event listeners. And I thought a fun event we could do is a lot of websites have dark mode, right? Where you see a picture of a moon and you click on it and the background color becomes black, right? So that is our objective to start this party off. A button with a picture we'll use an emoji, right, to keep things simple. So a button with an emoji of a moon is what I want right now. How can I do that? Eventually we'll worry about clicking it. But right now, a button with a picture of a moon, emoji of a moon. Ronald?
We could just type like a button.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we could just look for emoji moon icon.
All right, there we go. I want the button bigger just for fun. How can I make that button bigger, Renata?
You would just change the style, so you could do it in the CSS file. So just target your button, or you can add a class to the button of moon, maybe.
Yeah.
So I would do that, add a class probably.
Yeah.
Equal to
Or
moon.
let's do an ID because there's only one right now.
Okay.
And I'll call it
Sure.
moon button because I think we might have eventually have a class called moon too. So how can I target moon button?
So just with a hashtag moon button. Oh, you have an extra T.
Whoops.
Oh. Yes. Yeah. And just increase, I guess, font size.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a picture of a moon. Very nice. When I click the moon, eventually I want to change the background color, but we're not there yet. Our objective right now is click it. I want to see in the console a message that says clicked. So when I click the moon button, I want to see a console message. Moon was clicked. How can I do that using a React event listener? Our first one. First of many. Open to the class.
You add an onclick onto the button.
Yeah, so this part should feel good to you guys. This was actually harder in HTML. Now, in my opinion, it's way easier. We just put this property on click, and now it'll function. It'll fire a function anytime that button is clicked. So I put a little anonymous arrow function, and I say console.log moon was clicked. So this is actually like easier, in my opinion, than what we had to do with the DOM. Questions on that, though? This is our first event listener. Okay, so the more challenging part of this demo, let's brainstorm the real meat. How can we get, on a click, how can we get the background color to be black? And instead of making this a React fragment, I'm going to make this a div to make our lives easier.
Do a return function?
A return function that does what?
When you click on it, make it black?
Well, we're firing a function right here, this anonymous callback function. So we're successfully firing a function when the moon is clicked, but now we just... So in the DOM, we would just do body.style equals, or body.style.background color equals black. We're not allowed to use stuff like that anymore. No more document ever again. So how can we do this the React way?
You would use a state.
Yeah, we're going to need a piece of state. We are going to need state because anytime we change view from a user interaction, it has to be based on state. So Maybe before we do that, what if, okay, using this div, how manually could I just make the background color black? I think this will be a better way to approach this. Let's start there. How can I forget the moon? I just want a black background. How could I do that using this div here?
Are you allowed to add a style in there?
Absolutely, yeah. Or not a style, but let's add an ID or a class, but you tell me. What were you thinking, Kim?
I don't know, like class name,
Yeah.
black background.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so now in the CSS, how can we target that class?
Dot black background.
And now how can I make that whole div actually have a black background?
Background color.
Yeah, beautiful. And there we go. But it's not really what we intended, right? We want it to be the whole page. So does anyone know how I can tell this div to take up the whole page? There's actually two things I need to do.
You give it a height and width of 100%.
Yeah, let's try height 100%, although we might have to change that. Yeah, so let's do 100 view height. And then how do we get rid of the default margin that Chrome is giving us?
You do the
Margin 0.
The wildcard asterisk and margin 0. Okay. So that was a little detour. That's if we just want the background to be black all the time. But now I only want the background, this to show up when I click the moon. So now does it make more sense why the motivation for creating a piece of state? Because we're going to have a variable that changes its value based on a click. So now what's a good name for this piece of state we want?
I don't know, black and set black.
Yeah, I like it. So we need our useState hook. We're going to auto import with tab. What's the default value I want on this one, Hara?
Would it be an empty?
Yeah, because initially I just want this to be an empty string, like that, pretty much. And then now, do we already have a div? No. Okay, that's fine. So now, instead of the empty string, I want to set this equal to what? What do you think, Monica?
Black.
Yeah. Our piece of state variable called black. And initially, class name is going to equal what when I first run this? And we don't have to guess. I can console.log any piece of state. So what's going to show up in the console or not show up in the console? David, what's your guess? What is the value of black initially?
It's going to be nothing, right?
Correct.
Undefined.
Well, it's going to be an empty string, so it's going to show up as nothing in our console. Awesome. We're very close to our objective now, right? Now, I think it's just one more line. When I click the moon, this function fires, and how can I get our background to be black now?
Set black.
Yeah, set black to... What did we call it?
Black background.
Yeah. The name of the class. And now for the fun part, we click it. So it works. Any questions on that?
Is the black background ID is that only defined in the CSS? As in, like the properties are only there.
Correct.
Okay.
It's only here. Yep. Let me see if I can do split screen on. Okay, so let's go a little bit further on this if you guys are comfortable with it. Yeah, question.
If the set black is the background is the ID, right?
Set black is the ID?
No, set black is from the use state, but and black background where did we get black background from? Because I know it from CSS, but we didn't point to ID anything. How we can know we supposed to be create black background in CSS?
Oh, this line right here, this class name equals.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the selector we're using.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. So that div is associated with this .black background. Okay, so for now, more fun. If the screen's already black, what do you usually have the option you're allowed to do? Yeah. So if the screen's already black, what in a real site, what maybe can you do if you click it again?
Turn it white.
Yeah, turn it back. How? So let's brainstorm this, right? If we click it, and it's already black, how can we turn it back to white?
Remove the black background.
Yeah. So we could do what logic in here that says if it's already black, turn it back to its default value.
Could you use a ternary operator on that one and then just put the state into the
A Boolean
initial state?
Yeah, that would be the nicest way to do this. But let's refactor it after we just do it the kind of uglier way. Any ideas here? So I click it, it becomes black. That's great. But I want to click it again and it become white. And then maybe back and forth.
If statement.
Yeah.
So like maybe if black equals empty string, then set black background.
Else?
Black equals empty string.
Okay, this is a great bad suggestion, right? Because it violates the fundamental rules of React. We can never mutate state directly. So how can you reword that to do what you want but not violate the lords of React?
Set black?
Yeah.
So empty string.
Yeah. So now that works, but our variable name is not great. This really is a Boolean now. So maybe we change this to be called isBlack. And I change this. And then initially this will be, what makes sense? If initially this is a Boolean that says basically we're in dark mode, what makes sense initially for our website?
False.
False. Awesome. So now if it is black, set is black. Oh, actually we can make this logic way easier here. So on the click, I know we kind of ruined our site, but we're making it nicer in the long run. Let me show you. So right now, when I click this, I want it to change is black. If it's false, I want it to be true. And if it's true, I want it to be false. How can I do that on a click?
Set is black.
Set is black. Perfect.
Yeah.
To what? And this is fun. There's a sexy way to do this.
Bang.
Do you say bang?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and is black.
Yeah, I love it. So now when we click this button, it's going to keep changing the value of is black from this really nice, elegant bang operator usage. But now we broke our logic a little bit. So is black, what is the value of is black initially, Zach, when we first boot up this application?
False.
Correct. False. So class name equals false. Does that make any kind of sense?
No.
No, it doesn't. So here we can use the ternary operator to ask the question, is black true? And if it's true, what do we want to return in its place? What class?
Black.
Well, we called it black background.
Sorry.
Yeah. And if is black is false, we want to return what?
Empty string.
Yes. And now our logic is still working, but it's nicer logic than we had before. And we can do even more fun things because if it's already black, what should this icon actually be now? Instead of a moon, what should it be to turn it white?
Sun.
A sun, yeah. So we can do like fun things like this. How do I get the sun to show up? If is black is true, I want the sun to show up. How can I say that logic?
I think in line 13 with black background, could you put double and sign and add the sun there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I'm talking about actually just it being injected right here, this string. We can do it. We can do different things with the class later, but I want one of these two options to show up right here in this button, depending on if is black is true or not.
Can you use the is black question mark and then
Yeah, but to write JavaScript, I have to first do what symbols in JSX?
the brackets?
Curly braces, yeah. Okay, now
Curly
I'm
braces,
good.
yeah.
I can say is black question mark. This is like our if statement. And what if is black is true, which emoji do I want to return?
The sun.
Yeah, so I can do, and here I actually do have to use the quotes. And then if is black is false, I want to return the moon. So now this is actually going to be, oh, I forgot the quotes. So now look at this. Sun to light up the page and then moon to make it dark. And then we could do even more fun things like the background color should really be black here, right? When it's a moon. Do you guys want to do that, or do you get the idea? Is that enough for this demo? Go on, or you want to make it black? I don't know what the thumbs was for. I I guess quickly we'll make it black. Does anyone have an idea?
I have a question though, Matt.
Yeah. Let's pause there because that's a lot.
On line 13, why did you put it like above the onclick statement instead of like inside?
On line 13, on line 12?
12 now. Yeah.
So depending on the value of is black, we want class name to equal one of these two options. We could have done this though. We could have said if is black, return, and then we could have just written like what we want to return if it's black, and else return something else. But this is the more like React way to do this with ternaries. But you certainly can do the simpler version of like if is black, return this, else return something else.
And you want it like to be above like the onclick statement instead of like inside of it?
Oh, I think he means that it's because I think the style is being applied to the div.
Yes.
And the only thing the button is handling is changing the is black from true to false.
Yes. So doing different
your
things.
So your div is checking to see what is black is equal to, and then applying the styles depending on which state it's in, and then all your button is doing is changing that state.
Oh, okay, I see. Thank you.
Other questions on this? Ternary is used a lot in React. It's like a fancy if else. Not fancy, just shorter, right? Okay. Let's move on, I guess, to forms. So next objective, totally separate from dark mode, but we're going to write it right below just because why not? Keep things simple. So I guess in line with like dark mode or moons, I guess we're going to have a form or an input box where an astronomer can enter the name of a new moon. So like if they discover Cassius or whatever. So initially, I just want an input box for them to type in the name of a moon. The name of a moon. So how can I get that below? Well, we should make it in a new div, right? So I'm going to make another div. And then put the new code I need to write here so it doesn't interfere with that other stuff. Yeah, so how do I get a place the user can type some input? Ketzerin?
Input.
Yeah, we just have an input tag. Type equals text is default, so I don't need that. Now it shows up right here and the user can type in. Inputs, unfortunately, get pretty complicated in React. We have to do what we call controlled inputs. So basically, every time the user types, I want to save that as a piece of state in React. So I have to, when using inputs, I have to create a piece of state to track it in React. So what's a good name as the user types for me to create a piece of state and record it? How do I create that piece of state, basically? And what's a good name for that? Who are we at? Gyung?
You can call name, a set name.
Sure.
use state and I think empty string.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have a place to store what the user types. But now, how do if they type in the name C for Cassius, I want name to equal C. But how do I get a function to fire? So our second event listener, how do I get a function to fire every time the user types into this input?
Onchange.
Yeah, so we have one called onchange. And here again, we have a little callback function. And here I'll just say typing for now to see if this works. So I type in the letters C and it doesn't work. Oh, there we go. So now I'm typing and it's console.log typing. But that's not good enough, right? I want to see the letter they actually typed in. So how can I see the letter that they actually typed in, or letters?
You have to pass E and e.target.value.
Yeah. So Chrome does some work for us by giving us the event, and we can access what they actually typed in by this code, e.target.value. And we can console.log that to see that. So as the user's typing in, now we can see what they type in. So I said Cassius, right? So I can see that in my console, but originally I said in React, we have to save it to a piece of state. So we created this piece of state called name. How do we now, every time they type, record to that piece of state what they typed in? Opens the class because it's hard.
Set name.
Is it set name?
Yeah, good job. Set name to what?
Name.
Not name. Name is equal to what right now?
An empty string. So
Yeah.
Would you need e.target.value and set name?
Yeah. And then to verify that this worked, what can I console.log? Just for my own benefit. Sanity
Set
check.
name.
Not set name. Set name is our setter. It's a function.
Oh.
Name?
Yeah, just name. So will name change as the user types in? So there it goes. Yeah. So now we're perfectly Reactly tracking users' input. Actually, that's not true. There's one more thing we need to do to make this an official React controlled input. Does anyone know?
Is it the volume?
Yeah, so we have to set the value equal to what?
Name.
Name, exactly. And now we're good.
Why do you have to do that value to name? Is it just a React thing or is there a reason? I just never knew.
Well, it's a React thing. So this value property will, whatever you put in here, it will always be the value for the input box. So I'm trying to type right now, even though you guys can't see that. So we basically have to say the value will equal whatever our state value is for it to be like an actual controlled React input. If you don't put it, I think it'll still work. It's just there might be some edge cases where things get weird. So just put it. So inputs got a little bit harder, right? Kind of doing React. I don't know what you guys think, but this is a little bit tricky. Yeah, this is a little bit tricky for sure. But this is going to be how you do all inputs in React. Okay, let's pause there for some questions. No?
Yeah, I have one. Set name. What who determines that name? Is that something React does, or is that something we choose?
Yeah, so anytime we create a piece of state, our job is to give it a name, and then it will automatically have a setter, because we're we're never allowed to change state. So React has to give us a way to change it because we're not allowed to change it except with their setter. So this first variable is like the actual piece of state. And this second variable is the function to change the state. So this is going to be the pattern every time you create a piece of state in React.
And we choose that name, the function. That's like an argument in there.
Yes, but no. We could call this anything we want, but you're not going to because of the rules of best practice. You're going to call this whatever you want, but this second one is just going to be the word set in front of the first one. Although you could say that this could be anything technically. You just wouldn't.
Is the argument or parameter that you put next to save state, I'm sorry, use state, is that always going to equal to the initial value of your...
Yes. That's its purpose.
So, yeah, so like in this case, name is always going to be equal to whatever's in this parentheses, and then is black is always going to be equal to that then?
Well, not always, just
No, I mean,
when.
To start.
To start.
To start.
Yeah, exactly. What else?
Can you go over the controlled input?
Sure.
I'm just, yeah.
So we want an input box for our user to be able to type in the name of a new moon. In React, when we were in the DOM, in normal JavaScript, they just typed and then we didn't care as they typed. In React, every keystroke we have to record to state. So we created a piece of state just for this purpose, to record what the user types in. We called it name. We have to do set name, and then to create a piece of state, we use state. And then we have a listener, an event listener we wired up to this input box right here called onchange. And it will do, like its name says, listen for any change. The user typing into that input box is technically a change. So this function will fire every time they type in. And what we said is update our state to be the value, the current value of the input box. Other questions? Okay, so the user now is entering a new moon. Terrific. But I mean, we want them to be able to submit the new moon, right? So add moon. Sorry, that looks gross, but add moon. So how can we get a button add moon to show up? Kevin? Are you there, Kevin? Your mic is okay. Roman?
You could just do a button.
Yeah.
Limit.
You just do a button, add moon. Now, when I click this, for right now, I just want a function to fire. We'll have to think about what we want to happen in a bit. But for right now, I want a console.log with the name of the moon. That might be fun, right? So when I click the button right now, I want a console message with the name of what the user typed in for their moon. Any ideas there? Alex, any ideas? It's going to be very similar to this.
Would you just do like an onclick?
Which one?
Onclick.
Yeah, exactly. So onclick will fire any function we want when the user clicks the element. And here I said I want to see the value, the current value of the new moon they typed in. So what do I console.log here to see the current value of the new moon they're typing in?
So just name.
Yep, exactly. So they click add moon and I see Cassius. Awesome. So I'm thinking that in our moon app, we are going to have at least a few moons to keep track of. So I'm going to keep, these are going to be state because they're changing, right? And they're information from the user. So how can I keep track of these moons? What would make sense? How can I create a piece of state to keep track of these moons?
An array?
Yeah. So I'm going to create an array of moons, but how do I create that as state? It's going to be very, very similar to 12 and 14. Aaron, what do you think? I want to create a new piece of state that is eventually an array of my name of moons. But right now will just be empty.
So it's similar to 14?
It's very similar to 12 and 14.
I don't know.
Sorry, did you say you're not sure? Or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you give me a hint?
Well, very similar to 12 and 14. So it's going to start the same. So const. What's a good name for an array of moons?
Moons?
Uh-huh. And then the second one we don't have to think about. We just put what word in front of our variable.
That name?
Set moons. Yep.
Oh, set moons.
And then we're creating a piece of state, so we don't have to think about this part. We need what method?
Use state, right?
Yeah. And then what should the default value of an empty array be? Well, I gave it away there.
Empty array.
An empty array, yeah. Cool. So now we have a place to put our new moons. So now thinking back to when they type in a new moon and press enter, or actually not press enter, maybe we'll have time to explore that. But they click add moon. Instead of console.logging name, what might I want to do? This is starting to get fun.
You want to console log the array?
Well, I want to add this new moon to my array of moons.
You want to push.
That's violating the laws of React. So if we did something like moons.push, very bad. We never can mutate state directly, and moons is state. So what's the one option we have for changing state in React?
Set moon.
Set moon or moons?
Moon.
Well, we're not setting moon here. Moon is already set, right? If I console.log moon, moon is fine.
Are we going to use affect for that?
Oh, sorry. We didn't call it moon. We called it name. No, we're not going to use a use effect right now. We don't need to. Okay, so the user's typing in the name Cassius for the new moon. Name is currently Cassius. I want Cassius to show up in this piece of state, like this. That's our objective.
Is it set moons parentheses name?
Yes. Kind of. Because what will moons look like now if we do this? If I console.log moons, who has a guess for what moons will look like. Bonus question. What did it first look like? And what does it look like after I add Cassius? So we'll see what it first looks like when I press save, an empty array, which makes sense. What about after I click add moon? Who has a guess?
Is it going to be characters?
Is it going to be characters?
Cassius.
Yes, kind of. But we call characters what?
String.
A string, yeah. So it's the string Cassius. And this is bad. We went from an array to a string. And we shouldn't be changing data types like that, usually. So how can we refactor Ryan's code here?
Moons dot push.
We can't violate the rules of React.
No. Okay.
Do we put the name inside a square bracket?
Yeah, we can. This is going to be a problem too eventually, but it gets us a little bit better because now at least moons is an array with that first moon. But name of moons. So now if somebody types in Thebe, who has a guess for what is going to happen to our moons array when I press add moon? What's going to happen?
Overwrite?
Yeah, which is not ideal. We still want Cassius. So this is getting real interesting. How do we say, well, keep all the old stuff? Keep all the old moons, but add a new one. And what did I tell you is my favorite operator for creating a copy of an array?
The spread operator?
Spread operator. Spread operator will create a copy of an array. So in here, how can I use the spread operator to get the old moons? All my old moons.
Triple dots and then moon.
And now how do I put in the new moon?
Comma.
You put.
You know what we could do? This might be a little aggressive. Let's first just, how do I make a copy of copy moon's copy? Let's start there. How can I make a moon's copy? And let's use the spread operator. What piece of state do I put in here?
Moons.
Moons. Now, moon's copy is a piece of state or not? It's not an official React piece of state. So we can use mutating methods. So how can we add something in a normal way to an array that's not a piece of state?
Push.
Yes. And what do we want to push?
Name.
And now finally, we want to overwrite set moons with what?
Moon copy.
Copy?
Yeah, there we go. So now, initially, moons is an empty array. I type in Cassius, click add moon, I have Cassius, and now Thebe. Click add moon, and I have Thebe. And we still have Cassius. So this is really nice. We're doing really good on time. I don't know how. So questions on that?
You said there was another way of doing that. What was the other way?
Well, the fancier way is this. Well, let me make it in the fancier way is this. Well, let me challenge it to you guys. Who can do the fancier way using like one line and I mean, we basically typed it out before. We want to spread all the old moons and then put in what to get our new moon?
The bracket name?
Well, it's just name because we're already in brackets here. So these 3 lines can be condensed to this, but I'm sure this is a little hard to understand, or maybe not. I don't know. I'll leave.
So just to clarify, we can use the dot push method as long as it's not interfering directly with the state.
Yes.
And then we're gonna. Okay.
Although
in my mind it meant like,
yeah,
we can never use it, but it's specifically when you're trying to set state because you're leaving that up to React.
Although I feel like just you using it for other variables will maybe poison you for using it with state variables, but so maybe try to get the line 45 is definitely the nicer, in my opinion, nicer looking code, especially in React ecosystem. But you have both options there for sure.
So for line 45, that spread operator is doing the work of line 42 in this case. It's creating a copy of an array.
Let's check it out, right? What does the spread operator do? So we have David, Daniel, Ketzerin. If I put a spread operator, whoops, I did 2 arrays. If I put a spread operator right before this array, what does that actually look like in the console? Any guesses? No, it's not. It's pretty simplistic.
Would it just be everybody's names?
Yeah, it's just the names by themselves with commas. Oh, yeah. And Chrome didn't even show the... It just takes out the values and they're like just floating, kind of. It's kind of bizarre. I maybe should have a deeper understanding of how it's working behind the scenes, but it works for arrays and objects and just like extract. It just gets rid of the brackets or the curly braces and just the items are just floating, kind of. That's how I think of it.
Yeah, it just unpacks them there and just spreads them in as single arguments into the function call or whatever. And then since console log doesn't really put the commas, it just separates them with spaces, I think.
Yeah, but what data type is this? Never mind. I pissed off JavaScript. Yeah, I don't have a deep understanding of how it works. I just have a utility concept of how it works. It'd be a very interesting challenge to create the spread operator. Anyway, any questions on that?
Yeah. And why wasn't a moon a piece of state yet on line 41 and 2?
Why isn't this a piece of state?
Yeah, if we're spreading.
There's only one way to create state in React. These lines and use state. So if you don't do that, then it's not state.
But then, I thought we were like calling it by like spreading it, and that made it state.
Oh yeah, now we're setting it as state, but it's so in React we never mutate things. We just make copies and then replacements. Everything's like starting fresh every time with just a replacement. So here we're just like building something and then saying, okay, well here's this new piece of state, but
oh, okay. 43 was like the set.
So now we can't mutate Moon's now, but we can still mutate Moon's copy because they're different. Moon's copy we can still play with. We can do whatever we want. But we can't do this with Moon's. They're different variables.
Max, like we can't just use that spread operator, right? I think like it's specific, like use cases, or like where you have to do it. Like you can't just say like let names is equal to that array that you had and try to spread it out and be like, oh yeah, I want it to be the string spaced out. But I don't think it works like that. I think you can only specifically
let
put it
names
in
equal to what?
either
Like this?
like what you had earlier where you're trying to do type of, but I think it only works with like
Yeah,
spreading it into an array or into a new array or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's
So this
not
is
gonna give
not,
you-
VS Code is not happy with that. Correct. Which is interesting. I've never even tried to do that.
What about if you wrap those in parentheses? I still don't think that'll work. Yeah. I mean, just the way the spec is built.
Well, obviously, if we did square brackets, it would then work. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, but you can spread arguments. This is getting too in the weeds, but usually you're going to use spread at this point when you're just making a copy of one array to another. That's going to be your use case. We'll worry about other use cases later on in the course.
So just to clarify, the spread operator will spread. Can you go back to that?
Okay.
So the spread operator will spread David and Ronald's names into like just two different strings, but then those will be put into another bracket because of the way it's set up, right? Like another array.
Yeah.
So, you're
So
basically
this is that you correct what you're saying, but here let me give the clear example. So you have an array and you want to make a copy. You put in new brackets and you spread the old array. That's how you make a copy. Okay? So
Okay, awesome.
We're getting in the weeds with the spread operator, but this is the fundamental purpose.